Hey everybody, it's me just checking in again. So this is a more typical kind of video that I might do where I can talk through it, but it's really just my or our course as opposed to me as a talking head on the screen. So for you know kind of a more official class situation, I would probably review due dates with students or go back through unit material that we've looked at or whatever. So that's actually maybe useful here too. So we spent a lot of time looking at Unit 1 and kind of going over how our course is set up as far as coordinating the syllabus with the units and just sort of figuring out like again how the moving parts of the course work together. So our Unit 1 now, which is where we're in, we've done our face-to-face meeting, and now we move kind of to the online piece, is um, is all contained in Unit 1 here. So it has multiple kind of sections to it. There's a reminder to look at the how this course works, or whatever you might like to call your orientation area. Read me first, call it orientation. Nice to have some text explanation of what's going on, but also maybe a screenshot like this of things that you're pointing students to the units, to the due dates, to important areas in your course, objectives, that kind of stuff. And I think it's as useful in the hybrid environment as it would be in the fully online environment too. And then we have a couple of different assignments going on. So you're building your home page, for which we use the journal function if you want to set that up in your course. And again, if there's stuff that we're doing here that you're interested in as far as like how can you implement this in your course, then we can certainly spend time looking at like what buttons to click kind of a thing um, if you're interested. Um, okay, so there's the home page. Again, I try to do a lot of the little screenshots of buttons to click so that everything is kind of self-contained for students. So if they didn't quite catch the walkthrough in class, they can hopefully just follow through, in a relatively straightforward way. I can show you the little tool I like to use to grab these screenshots. You might have one of your own that you use, so we can maybe share a couple of different possibilities for how to grab these really quickly and easily. Um, a number of people have done the home pages, which is great. And then as part of another part of our first unit here, we are doing the discussion board. So I may have mentioned in class, maybe I didn't, but you'll certainly see how these two things they seem to duplicate the same process of introducing yourself. I am really, really aware of that duplication and will usually highlight it for students in my classes. But I like having the home page as this kind of sort of static thing that students create at the outset. It's pretty flexible, and then of course they're including the picture in there, but they can always exist in a fairly easily accessible way. So for us, they'll always be, accessible through this home pages link. Even if it moves in our course menu, it's always somewhere there. Um, but the discussion board, so we duplicate kind of the introduce yourself part of the assignment. I've even had students cut and paste from one to the other. Jesus, I need to tell them not to do that or ask them. Um, but the reason I do that is I like for students who maybe have never used Blackboard before or never really used the discussion board feature to have a really low stakes opportunity to use a tool that is really going to be like a foundational tool for us in our workshop, but in the classes that I teach as well. So for me, it's nice if they feel basically like as little pressure as possible to, it's not like they're doing a reading and engaging in a course concept and then they have to use this technology they've never used. So I like the duplication because it gets them using this tool that maybe they haven't used before. Um, so there's a reason that we do the same thing basically twice, but in two different venues or using two different tools. I like the reply part here. That again is a staple of my classes, and something that we can certainly talk about, creative ways of setting up. Students doing, sometimes I'll do like a post and then you're supposed to reply to somebody else, but then you have to reply to a reply as opposed to always just post and then two different replies. So there's lots of ways of engaging in kind of meaningful dialogue. Discussion boards can really devolve if you're not sort of creative about how you're using them and what you're asking students to do. And I think a lot of people discover that they use discussion boards to ask questions that basically just have one right answer, which isn't very useful because it's not discussion, really. Um, And unless you set it up a certain way, students will often just read what others have said, get the right answer, and then post that. You can actually set it up so people cannot see anything until they've done an initial post, which is sometimes useful. But again, if everyone's posting ostensibly the same right answer, how do you get discussion going? So discussion boards are really not the best tool for just testing on basic sort of factual knowledge. Um, okay, so that then sets us up really for the rest of this week. I always invite students, and of course you guys too, to be in touch with me if you have questions, whether they're big course questions, more global policy things, or maybe just some tech questions at this point. I'm happy to help with those. We do have a lot of resources on campus that are really good for that as well. Um, uh, that I can provide more contact info for, and we can certainly talk about a little bit more for your own benefit, but again, to pass on to students who might really benefit as well. The course badging system, hopefully you'll see how that works as we get a little further into it, and we can maybe look at that when we meet again on Tuesday. I'm personally interested to see how that looks from the student side, and also to get your take on it. We may have a different kind of engagement factor with that sort of thing, but I think it's potentially a useful tool, used maybe judiciously and as a positive reinforcement rather than a kind of negative, oh, you didn't get the badge for this, or whatever the case might be. Okay, there's a few other things that you'll see here that we maybe didn't get to. There's our readings link that I mentioned, which duplicates what you'll find in each of the units, except all the readings are gathered together. So what we'll be looking at as part of our discussion next Tuesday is this little piece from my earlier hybrid learning book. I have a new one coming out maybe next year or soon, but for now we'll read this as a sort of intro thing. We'll start our meeting next week maybe with a little discussion of this, or maybe not. We'll see what we're interested in. You'll also see a more tools link that I didn't talk about in our first meeting, but we certainly can. Oh, here's an interesting case where the security features of the web prevent this from showing up. So let me see if I can get it to work in real time here. And I can show you what this is and how or why it might be useful. Yeah, ta-da. So we can look at that if someone probably has to remind me of that. And then we can also look at this More Readings blog, which again is one of those things that we might use, we might not use, but if you wanted to know what a blog would look like, or how to set it up from the instructor side, but also what it would look like from the student side, this is a good example of how it might exist and a potential effective use for it within the context of a class. All right, so just a reminder then, due date wise, we have it set up so that we've had our face-to-face meeting, you're off and running with the online work, we have that Friday due date for main posts like in the discussion board, and then no later than Sunday for wrapping everything else up. But again, I always try to encourage people to use this flexible format to your advantage. So the more you can get done in pockets of time that you have available, I get up early in the morning, the rest of my family isn't up, it's like a perfect time where I can work for 30 minutes, but it's a really, really efficient 30 minutes. So I get like an hour and a half done in 30 minutes because it's just me sort of focused on what I'm doing. So you develop your own kind of rhythm or schedule, you figure out when your own little spots of time are. Okay, so again, if you have questions or concerns, be in touch with me. And as I said in class, I really look forward to our next meeting and to our workshop unfolding as a really, hopefully, interesting and productive discussion of some how-tos in Blackboard, but some big, big questions about course design and sort of how best an institution can support hybrid learning as an effective model, but also one that needs certain kind of infrastructure in place to be successful and sustainable for the long run.